Hi, I am Zahra, and when my sister Noor, my parents' golden child, fired me from our family company just one day after seizing control, she thought she'd erased me forever. But she forgot the one clause I'd buried in the paperwork. A ticking bomb that's now unraveling their empire while they're too blind to see I'm the one who lit the fuse. My sister, my parents' golden girl, waited exactly one day after taking over the company and fired me. No explanation, no thank you, just, your services are no longer needed. They all thought I'd just walk away, but there was one tiny detail they forgot. One clause buried deep in the paperwork they never thought I'd remember. Now they're the ones losing everything. And the worst part, they still don't know it was me who pulled the first thread. Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this and where from? Drop it in the comments below. I was expecting a quarterly meeting. Nothing fancy, just another Tuesday morning, another agenda to review. My heels echoed through the marbled hallway of our company's headquarters in Portland, the place I'd practically lived in for over a decade. The receptionist gave me a strange, tight-lipped smile. I nodded politely and pushed open the glass doors to the conference room. That's when I saw the balloons. Not just any balloons. Silver and blue ones arranged in a dazzling arch. Bouquets of roses sat on the table, my mother's favorite. A small table near the wall offered cupcakes and champagne. Someone had even printed a banner celebrating new leadership. My heart gave a confused jolt. I took a step in. The whole board was seated already. My parents, our general counsel, the CFO, our marketing director. Faces turned toward me. Some looked excited, a few looked down. And then I saw her. Noor. My older sister, dressed to impress in a cream-colored suit, her hair swept back like she was about to accept an award. I blinked, forcing my face into something polite. No one had mentioned anything about a celebration. Nadia, my mother said quickly, glad you could make it. Glad I could make it? I had scheduled this meeting. What's going on? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. Mom's smile faltered. Just sit, dear, you'll see. Then Dad stood up. Today marks a pivotal moment in our family company's legacy. We are proud to announce the transition of leadership. Noor will be taking over as CEO. Effective immediately. Applause. The room filled with clapping. I stood still, frozen somewhere between shock and shame. I hadn't been told. Not a whisper, not a memo. Noor smiled like she was bathing in the spotlight. I didn't clap. I couldn't. My hand stayed limp by my side as I locked eyes with her, searching, hoping for a trace of explanation. But she turned toward the board, already moving on. I believe it's time to streamline leadership and position the company for the future, she said smoothly, her voice full of calculated charm. And in that spirit, I didn't even hear the next line clearly. The HR director, Aisha, walked toward me, paper in hand, my name on it. Termination. My breath hitched. My eyes darted to our parents. They looked everywhere but at me. Noor stepped closer and murmured, It's not personal, Nadia. You've outlived your role. Not personal? I signed the incorporation papers with Dad the week I turned 26. I was the one who canceled my wedding to pull the company out of a cash flow crisis. I had skipped birthdays, anniversaries, even Grandma's funeral, because there was always a fire to put out. And now I was being told I'd outlived my role. You're a liar, I hissed, my voice low but fierce. This is as personal as it gets. She smirked, unfazed. Grow up, Nadia. You were never cut out for this. I clenched the folder Aisha handed me, already knowing what it contained, the usual severance boilerplate, cold, sterile, final. I forced my legs to move, leaving the room before the applause resumed. The hallway felt longer than I remembered. My heels suddenly too loud. I whispered to myself, You betrayed me, Noor. You'll pay for this. I caught up to Noor just before the elevators. You couldn't even tell me in private? I asked, voice low. She didn't even turn. This is business, Nadia. You always made it too personal. Business, I snapped, stepping closer. I saved this company. And you stabbed me in the back? She laughed, cold and sharp. You saved nothing. You were just convenient. My badge didn't work when I tried to access my office. A junior assistant I'd mentored walked past, holding the box with my name taped on the side. My pens, my framed photo of Mom and me from the company's first gala, even the mug that read Boss Lady in training. It was all packed as if they knew long before today. The sun was too bright when I stepped outside. I sat in the driver's seat of my car, gripping the steering wheel. I didn't cry, not yet. I drove home on autopilot. Portland traffic, a blur of noise I couldn't process. My kitchen was too quiet. The coffee maker blinked. 10, 12, ayaming, still morning. Still the same day I had walked in expecting a normal meeting and been walked out, as if I didn't matter. I leaned against the counter, the box beside me. I opened it to put things away, but my fingers stopped on something familiar. A pen. The wooden one Dad gave me when we launched the company. Dark walnut, smooth as silk. He'd had our initials engraved. "You're the future," he had said. I pressed it to my palm and sat at the kitchen table. Then it came. The sobs, not loud, not theatrical, just sharp, short bursts that stole my breath. I felt stupid, used, erased. I whispered to myself, "You erased me, Dad. How could you let her do this?" My phone buzzed. A news alert. Family owned. Pinnacle appoints new female CEO, continues legacy. Legacy? I had been that legacy, just invisible now. I texted Noor, my voice shaking through the words. "You'll regret this, Noor. I'm not done." She replied, "You're nothing, Nadia. Stay gone." I reached into the box for a tissue and felt something tucked under the cardboard flap. A plain envelope, no label, just my name written in careful handwriting. It wasn't in the original packing. I stared at it. It was from our legal counsel, only addressed to me. The paper shook in my hand. I didn't open it right away. I needed to breathe first, but deep down I knew this letter might change everything. I sat there at the kitchen table, the afternoon light slanting in through the blinds, dust particles swirling in that muted golden haze. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The flap resisted slightly, like it knew what was inside wasn't meant for me to see, or at least not in the way they'd planned. The paper inside was heavier than I expected. Not the cheap printer kind. This was the good stock, embossed at the top with our family company's legal counsel's letterhead. I unfolded the pages slowly, my stomach tightening with every crease. It wasn't a severance package. It was a copy of a notarized agreement dated 5 years ago. I skimmed the opening lines and felt my breath catch. It was the night Noor came to my apartment crying, the night she said she was scared the company wouldn't make payroll, that if we didn't find $300,000, 0 cents by the end of the week, we'd default on a supplier contract and lose our biggest client. I'd barely been able to sleep that week. I drove 4 hours to Seattle in the middle of the night because a lawyer she trusted was based there. I remember sitting in his office with a paper cup of gas station coffee in hand, my hair still damp from a rushed shower as I signed the temporary power of attorney and wired the funds. She had sworn, "Nadia, I'll never forget this." I mean it. Apparently she had. The document in my hands was clear. I had transferred the funds personally, and in return, I'd been granted a 12% non-dilutable voting stake, active unless I submitted a signed resignation, a resignation I never gave. So no, they couldn't just toss me out like an assistant who misplaced a few files. They knew. They had to know. The only reason they thought they could get away with it was if they assumed I'd forgotten, that I'd lost the paperwork, that I was still the same girl who put family loyalty before legal leverage. They were banking on my silence. I pressed my thumb along the embossed seal. The ink hadn't faded. The signature, my sister's, still curled at the bottom next to mine. Everything inside me went still. They hadn't just pushed me out. They'd tried to erase me after everything. I whispered to myself, "You thought I'd forget, Noor. You thought wrong." My mind started racing. I went out to the garage, the door groaning as I opened it, letting in the thick late-afternoon heat. Dust hung in the air, clinging to the boxes stacked along the far wall. I dug through them. Old files, thumb drives, a couple labeled tax folders from years back. I found the one I was hoping hadn't gone missing during my last move. Inside, emails printed out and stapled, labeled by month. There were a few wire receipts from the bank showing the exact transfer and a flash drive taped inside a folder. I plugged it into my laptop right there on the workbench. There it was. A voice memo. Noor's, recorded 5 days after the loan. I don't know how to thank you. If I ever forget this, I don't deserve to be in charge of anything, let alone this family. I played it twice. The second time, I didn't cry, I didn't flinch. I just let the resolve settle in. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a full rewrite of history, and I'd been too trusting to see it coming. I whispered to myself, "You promised, Noor. Now I'm holding you to it." Back inside, I gathered my laptop, the letter, and a few key documents. I packed them neatly into my leather tote, one of the few gifts Dad had given me that wasn't handed down from my mother's closet. I didn't want to be at home anymore. I needed a place to think. I drove down the road and stopped at a quiet coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and an insurance office, the kind of place where no one really asks questions if you stay too long. I ordered a plain iced tea, found a table by the window, and opened my laptop. For the next hour, I combed through every email I had archived. I pulled up payroll reports I'd signed, marketing plans with my comments on them, and financial breakdowns I'd personally assembled during the 2021 downturn. I saved screenshots, labeled folders, bookmarked everything. The longer I worked, the less I felt like someone licking their wounds, and more like someone preparing for battle. They thought I'd go quietly. They'd underestimated me. I called Malik, my voice steady. "You still have those files?" He hesitated. "Zara, they'll destroy me if they know," I said. "They'll destroy you if you don't help me. Choose a side." When my inbox pinged, I paused. A new email. Subject line: "I don't agree with what they did to you. We need to talk." It was from Malik, the company's accountant. He'd been there for years, kept mostly to himself, loyal but observant. I clicked the message, heart pounding. The coffee shop emptied out slowly, leaving only the quiet whir of the espresso machine and a soft jazz playlist echoing from overhead. I closed my laptop, tucked it into my bag, and stepped outside into the Portland dusk. A chill had crept into the air, late spring pretending to be winter for one last night. The address he gave me wasn't far. I walked the few blocks past shuttered storefronts and rows of cars with dew beginning to settle on their windshields. His apartment building was old but clean, tucked between a yoga studio and a dry cleaner that hadn't updated its signage since the 90s. He answered after 2 knocks. Malik had always looked a little tired, even back at the office, but tonight he looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. "I'm glad you came," he said, stepping aside. I followed him into a living room with mismatched furniture and a pile of unopened mail stacked by the door. He motioned for me to sit, then hovered by a small table where his laptop and a stack of USB drives sat waiting like evidence in a courtroom. "They told me to delete everything," he began, voice low. "Minutes from board meetings, your shareholder records, voting logs. I was supposed to make it look like you never mattered." My stomach turned. I stayed silent, letting the weight of his words settle. He opened his laptop and clicked through a folder labeled Not Forgotten. "They said if I kept quiet, I'd get a raise. They assumed I'd play along because I'm invisible too. Just the accountant." He pressed play on the first file. My sister's voice, clear and cold, filled the room. "Nadia was never meant to last here. She's dead weight, an emotional liability." I didn't flinch, but I felt my throat tighten. Malik glanced over, but I didn't break eye contact with the screen. Next recording. This time, my mother. "She's family, but we need someone more presentable, reliable. The firm needs a clean face, not someone who disappears for months." I didn't disappear. I'd taken leave to care for Idris during his 2nd round of chemo. I'd kept the books running. I was answering emails at 4:00 IMM while they posted filtered photos from ski resorts. They knew it. I whispered to myself. "You lied about me, Mom. You all did." I didn't cry. Not now. The time for that had passed. Instead, I said quietly, "Did they sign off on it?" He nodded. "Your father was hesitant. Your mother and sister pushed it." He didn't fight long. I stood and paced the room, each step measured. "And you still have the originals?" "I kept everything out of guilt and fear. I'm not here to punish you, Malik. I'm here to correct what they buried." "They'll ruin me," he said, his voice shaking. I leaned forward, fierce. "They'll ruin you if you don't help me. Give me everything." He handed me the USB drives. "There's one more thing, the retreat, the one you skipped." That's when it started. They used your absence to argue you were disengaged. A memory flickered. Me spooning broth into Idris's mouth while his body rejected another treatment. I remembered ignoring texts about mandatory team bonding and watching those same colleagues toast champagne in matching bathrobes on social media. When I returned, half my projects were reassigned. No explanation, no welcome back. Just smiles that didn't reach their eye. Back in the present, I turned toward Malik. "You've done enough, thank you." He nodded, eyes downcast. "I'll deny it if they come for me. You won't have to." "I'm not going through the courts yet," I whispered to myself. "You're scared, Malik, but I'm not." Back at my place, I poured a glass of water and sat by the kitchen island, the same one where I'd once signed loan forms to save this family. I pulled out my old encrypted drive, copied over the files, and labeled the folder Ascent. I opened my LinkedIn account. It had been dormant for years, another sacrifice I'd made to appear loyal. Within minutes of reactivation, notifications poured in, but one message froze me mid-sip. "Hey stranger, still got that spark? I may have a proposition." The message sat open on my screen, and for a few seconds, I just stared at it. Khalil Peterson. I hadn't heard his name in years, not since he left our firm with nothing more than a nod and a tight smile. He'd been my mentor once, maybe the only one who genuinely saw me for more than the younger daughter in a family business. The email read, "I always knew who the real architect behind those contracts was. Let's build something that's yours this time. Name on the door, full seat at the table. Come, talk." I whispered to myself, "You saw me, Khalil. Now I'll show them all." 2 days later, I found myself standing in front of a sleek glass building in the heart of downtown, sunlight gleaming off its mirrored windows. The lobby smelled like cedar and fresh ground espresso, nothing like the stale carpet and ego of my family's office. I glanced at my reflection as I walked through the automatic doors. I didn't look broken anymore. I looked like someone who had remembered her own worth. Khalil greeted me in the open-concept workspace with a hug that lingered just a second longer than necessary. "There she is," he said, grinning. "The ghost they tried to bury." He introduced me to a few members of his leadership team, people who looked me in the eye, who shook my hand like I mattered. He walked me to a glass-walled conference room and slid a folder across the table. "Partner track," he said, plainly. "No back rooms, no backstabbing, but I know you've got unfinished business. We can wait, not forever, but for now." I didn't touch the folder. "Not yet. They betrayed me," I said, my voice steady. "I'm going to make them regret it." Khalil nodded, his eyes sharp. "I know you will, Zara. Burn it down." That evening, back in my apartment, I opened the accountant's files again. One in particular caught my eye, labeled Bridge Grant _terms signed PDF. I remembered the deal vaguely. It was a fast-tracked funding injection done under pressure. I had heard about it at the tail end. Too late to weigh in, the file loaded slowly. My stomach knotted as I scrolled down and saw it, my signature at the bottom of the document. Only I'd never signed that page. Not then, not ever. I pulled out an old notebook where I'd scribbled a packing list a few months back and compared the handwriting, the curves, the slant. It was close but not mine. Nor. She'd signed it, using my name, without my knowledge. It wasn't even a good forgery. She didn't know I looped my lowercase g differently. Sloppy, entitled, she must have thought I'd never check. I leaned back, the laptop humming quietly on my coffee table. My father once told me business was about trust, that in this family, your word is your bond. I wonder what he'd say now, after letting Noor bond my name to something I never approved. I whispered to myself, "You forged my name, Noor. That was your fatal mistake." My thoughts took me back to that awful boardroom day. I remembered Noor's polished speech, the scripted smiles, the projections I didn't recognize. She'd wielded charts I'd never contributed to, citing decisions I hadn't seen, and now I knew why. That forged signature had given her control she'd never earned, and I had been played like a pawn. Still, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, I went to the printer and watched the pages slide out, physical proof of their fraud. I tucked the forged contract into a plain envelope and wrote in neat black ink, "To the Office of Business Ethics, State of Oregon." This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about setting fire to the lie they'd built and standing in the smoke with my head held high. I sealed the envelope and stood still in my living room for a moment, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. Then I whispered, "They want someone more presentable. Let's see how they look in front of investors." I called Akazana, my voice fierce. "I've got the proof. Let's expose them." She said, "This is big, Zara. They won't know what hit them." I walked back to my laptop, opened LinkedIn, and hit reactivate. The screen refreshed. Pings started flowing in, welcomes, old colleagues, recruiters. But one name stopped me cold. Khalil again. Not the professional message this time, just, "Hey stranger, still got that spark? I may have a proposition." The county clerk barely looked up as she slid the stamped document back across the counter to me. "All filed," she said, tapping the seal. "Effective immediately." I slipped it into my leather folio, nodded politely, and turned to leave. Behind me, her voice cut through the silence of the marble-floored hallway. "You sure this won't stir things up?" I didn't turn around. "Oh, I'm counting on it." By the time I stepped into the parking lot, the morning haze had burned off. Sunlight spilled across the asphalt like nothing was wrong with the world. But I felt it, a shift, quiet but permanent, like something inside me had finally locked into place. I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning, Noor. You're not ready for me." Back home, I kicked off my shoes, made myself a black coffee, and opened my laptop. The desktop was a minefield of folders I hadn't looked through in years. Receipts, scanned contracts, forgotten backups from the cloud. I clicked on one named mom_sync_210 without thinking. I almost deleted it, but something made me open the logs first. Scrolling through, I found it. A call saved by accident. Synced when I was still on the family plan and helping Mom set up her new iPhone. The file was short, just under 3 minutes. The date made my stomach twist. 4 days before the board vote that ousted me. I hit play. Noor's voice crackled to life on speaker. "Nadia is smart." "Yeah, but she's soft, too loyal to fight me on anything." The line paused. Maybe whoever was on the other end laughed or nodded. Then Noor added, "That's why I win. Mom and Dad know it. She still thinks loyalty gets you somewhere." I stopped breathing. The words hit harder than I expected. There wasn't rage. Not at first. Just the kind of ache that makes your limbs feel heavy. The kind that hollows out your ribs. She'd said it so casually. Like it wasn't even cruel, just true. I sat there for a long moment, the cursor blinking in the corner of the screen like it was waiting on me to do something. I whispered, "This isn't me." I almost deleted it, but instead I clicked Save. I created a new folder, named it Contingency for Exposure. Then I dragged the audio file inside and closed the window. I stood, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to refill my mug. My hands were steady now. By the time I sat back down, I had made up my mind. I logged into the family trust system, the one I still had legacy access to, thanks to a long-forgotten clause my sister never bothered to revoke. I navigated to the power of attorney settings and uploaded the new revocation order, legal, stamped, and signed that morning. The moment I clicked confirm, her authority to act on my behalf vanished. I smiled, not out of revenge, but because I finally felt like I was driving my own damn car again. I whispered to myself, You're powerless now, Noor. Feel what I felt. Later that evening, I showered, pulled out a charcoal blazer I hadn't worn in a year, and packed a tote with just the essentials: my laptop, a thumb drive, the printed revocation, and the audio file burned onto a disc and labeled in red Sharpie. Before zipping it shut, I opened my email one last time and attached the recording to a new draft. I typed in my own address, filled the subject line with 5 words: use only if she forgets. I hit send. Then I powered off the laptop, stood up straight, and glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I didn't look broken. I looked ready. I left the envelope with the clerk, walked out of the county building, and didn't look back. Not out of defiance, but because I didn't need to anymore. That part of me, the one who always glanced over her shoulder, hoping to be acknowledged, hoping to be chosen, she was gone. I whispered to myself, "You're not their shadow anymore, Zahra. You're the storm." By evening, I was pulling up to the charity gala Noor had spent months planning. Her face was plastered on the program, her name at the top of the donor board. Hassan and Reza, a legacy she seized like a crown, forged with gold, I helped mine. The valet raised an eyebrow when he saw me step out of the car. I wasn't on the original guest list, but that didn't matter. Not tonight. Inside, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and curated perfection. Waitstaff in black vests glided between white linen tables, and conversations floated like champagne bubbles, surfaced deep and meant to impress. When I entered, a few heads turned. Some smiled politely, others whispered. But when Noor saw me from across the room, her expression froze for a moment. Then, just like she'd rehearsed 1,000 times, she smiled and glided to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice like velvet, "we built Hassan and Reza on legacy, on trust, on knowing when to lead and when to let go. Some of us," her eyes flicked to mine, "understand that better than others." I whispered to myself, "You're mocking me, Noor. Enjoy it while it lasts." A polite ripple of laughter followed. I didn't flinch. Instead, I lifted my glass, locked eyes with her, and smiled. Not the kind of smile that warms a room. The kind that makes people shift in their seats, unsure if they just missed something important. After the speech, I didn't stay for the applause. As I walked toward the coat check, I passed Noor again. Her smile faltered as I passed, but she didn't say a word. "Scared yet?" I murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. She froze, her eyes narrowing, but said nothing. Backstage, I knew she was checking her phone, probably trying to move funds or secure her position before I made my next move. That's when it began, her voice behind the curtain, sharp, hushed, but frantic. "What do you mean, access denied? That account is under my authority." Pause. "What do you mean it's been revoked? Who signed off?" She burst through the curtain, heels clicking like panic in motion. A board member stood beside her, hands raised in neutrality. "It's been updated, Noor. Legally, we were notified this morning." I didn't stay to watch her spiral. I already knew the sound. Outside, the air was crisp. I made my way to the parking lot slowly, savoring the first breath of control in years. I whispered to myself, "You're falling, Noor, and I'm the one who pushed you." But I wasn't surprised when she followed. "You think this is over?" she snapped, her voice slicing the quiet like a blade. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." I turned, let the silence stretch long enough to sting, then calmly, "Then I guess we both have something to regret." She stepped closer. "You think you can win against me? I was chosen. You were convenient." Her voice cracked at the edges. Not from sadness, from fury. "Chosen?" I spat, my voice rising. "You stole my life, Noor. Now I'm taking it back." I stepped aside, giving her the path back to her car. "You have a lovely night, Noor." Back in my apartment, the stillness welcomed me. I set my purse down, changed into sweatpants, and poured a glass of water. Then I noticed the door, scratched deep, like someone had tried to force it open. My stomach dropped. I opened the mailbox in the lobby. The metal was bent like someone had pried it. "Security reviewed the cameras. We caught a figure near your vehicle," the officer said, "but they stayed just out of frame. No plates, no face, nothing taken, nothing broken." just disturbed enough to make me feel watched. Back upstairs, I sat in the dark, let the quiet settle around me like armor. Then I reached for my phone, played the voicemail I'd saved days earlier, Noor's voice, light and smug. She Foreman won't fight back. She never does. That's why I always win. I let it play again and again. Then I whispered to the silence, "Let's change that." I whispered to myself, "You sent someone to scare me, Noor. It won't work." 3 days after filing the revocation, I parked a block away from the community center and sat in the car for a moment, watching people filter in. Noor's white Mercedes was already there, parked close to the front with deliberate precision. She never arrived late, and never without intention. I checked my purse again, even though I knew it was there. A sealed envelope, the contents notarized and final. My hand brushed against it like muscle memory. I took a steadying breath, then stepped out into the warm dusk. Inside, the HOA meeting was already underway. I heard her voice before I saw her, crisp, polished, echoing through the open hall. She was mid-presentation, gesturing toward a projection of a proposed development project. And, as acting trustee, she said with that trademark smile, "I've streamlined the permitting process for Phase 1. Efficiency is everything." Phase 1 was slated to break ground on property still tied to the family trust, my share included. I didn't rush. I walked slowly down the side of the room, past rows of neighbors and board members, and gently placed the envelope in front of the chairman. No words, no announcement, just presence. People turned. She did too. For a heartbeat, she froze. Then she smiled, tighter. "Well, look who finally decided to show up. You're not in charge anymore," I said, my voice calm but cutting. Her smile vanished. "You're delusional, Nadia." I said nothing, just took a seat in the back row, calm, controlled. The chairman looked confused at first. He glanced down, opened the envelope and unfolded the papers, his brow tightened. Then he motioned to another member beside him. Whispers began. I waited. Moments later, he cleared his throat. "Before we move on with item 4, we need to pause for legal review of this revocation notice. It affects the legitimacy of recent asset control declarations." Noor's lips twitched. "Oh, come on," she said too quickly. "This is last-minute theatrics. None of this is official." The chair didn't budge. "It's notarized and time-stamped. We'll table further votes until council weighs in." For the first time in a long while, I saw her blink in silence. Her eyes scanned the room like someone searching for backup that never arrived. After the meeting, I didn't linger. I walked out before the murmurs started, before anyone asked questions. But as I passed by the entryway, I caught the faintest thread of a whisper behind me. Someone said, "I thought she was gone for good." I kept walking. I whispered to myself, "I'm back, and you'll all feel it." That evening, I met Sana at a little cafe near the Willamette River, one she always loved for its open patio and live music. She'd already claimed a table near the back, nursing a coffee and scanning her tablet. "You were subtle today," she said as I sat down, "but surgical." I smiled faintly. Surgical is the only kind that leaves a scar. She tapped her tablet. "The story's there, Zara. The shady transfers, the silent ouster, the forged signatures. You've got enough to make people question everything they think they know about your sister." "I haven't decided if I want this to be public," I said carefully. "You have to," Sana urged, her voice intense. "They'll keep lying unless you expose them." I nodded, hesitant. "I need time, Sana. But I'm close." Sana looked at me for a long moment. "You helped me once when no one else would. I wouldn't be in this job without you, so I won't push. But I'll be ready when you are." I glanced out toward the street. People love a Phoenix story, don't they? They love the fire more. I didn't commit to anything, but I didn't stop her either. On the drive home, a song came on the radio. Fleetwood Mac, Landslide. Mom used to play it on repeat while cleaning the kitchen on Sundays. I could almost smell lemon polish and hear the dishwasher clattering. Her voice echoed in my head. "Let her shine, Zara. It's her turn." I spoke into the quiet cabin of my car. "It was never a turn, Mom. It was a sentence." I pulled into my driveway just as the last note faded. Inside, I dropped my purse on the hall bench and took a moment to stand still. No noise, no rush, just breath. I whispered to myself, "You chose her, Mom. Now watch me choose myself." Then I walked to the drawer at the end of the hallway, the one I hadn't touched since before the restructuring. I opened it slowly and pulled out the old ledger wrapped in faded floral fabric. Nor always swore it had been lost in a flood during the warehouse move. I never corrected her. My thumb brushed the edge of the binding. It was heavier than I remembered, not just from ink or paper. It carried weight because now it had context. I picked up my phone, stared at Sana's name a moment, then pressed call. She answered on the second ring. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's burn it all down," I added, my voice fierce. Sana laughed. "Fierce. That's my girl. This is going to be explosive." I stayed up the night before, reviewing every line in the ledger, every receipt, every scribbled annotation in my own handwriting. It wasn't just about money, it was about memory. Proof that I had been there all along, holding up the foundation while they painted over the cracks. At 7:08 a.m., Sana texted one word: live. I didn't move for a moment. I just stared at the screen as the article began spreading. The headline was bold, simple, and direct. "The Silent Founder: What Really Happened Inside Hassan and Reza." She hadn't exaggerated. The article was clean, tight, and impossible to ignore. It began with our origin story, 2 sisters and a dream. But then it peeled back the years. Document scans, timeline graphics, side-by-side images of my name on founding documents, and photos of Noor accepting awards alone. Sana hadn't just written a story. She told the truth. Within hours, my inbox lit up like it hadn't in years. A message from an old intern, Jamal. "I always thought something didn't add up. Thank you for speaking." Another from one of our earliest clients, "Zara, I always respected your quiet steadiness. Let me know if you ever start something new." Then came the one I didn't expect. "Hi Zara, I'd like to speak to you about next steps. L. Whitaker, Cascade Capital." Whitaker had been one of our seed investors. If he was reaching out now, that meant real shift. That meant money moving. I whispered to myself, "You're losing it all, Noor. The world sees you now." I was pouring a cup of coffee when my phone rang. I didn't even need to check the screen. "You vindictive witch!" Noor's voice was so shrill it clipped through the receiver. "Do you think this will fix anything? Do you think they're going to see you as a victim? You're pathetic. I built this." "You built lies," I snapped, my voice cold. "And I'm tearing them down." I didn't say another word, just hit end. I let her scream into silence. By late afternoon, a formal letter arrived in my inbox. Her lawyer was filing a cease and desist and threatening a defamation suit. Attached to the complaint were official financial records meant to show her exclusive leadership. But as I scrolled through the attached files, something stopped me cold. It was a report from 2020. The bridge grant proposal Noor had pushed forward without me, and right there, buried on page 6, was the same falsified ledger she had used to convince the board I'd become non-essential. Only now she was citing it in a legal claim, as if no one had kept the original. She didn't know I had. I called Mr. Farouk, my voice steady. "She's lying in court. I've got the original ledger," he said. "This is perjury, Zara. She's done." That evening, I met Mr. Farouk, my attorney, in his small but tidy office. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I take it this is urgent?" he asked, closing his office door behind me. I handed him the fabric-wrapped ledger, the same one I'd kept hidden for years, tucked behind old tax boxes and moving files. "This is the original," I said. "She's lying again, but this time on record." He opened it, flipped to the right section, and gave a quiet whistle through his teeth. "Well, this just turned into perjury." He looked up, eyes sharp now. "We're not on defense anymore." By nightfall, the story had made it to national syndication. Not front page, but loud enough to rattle. And rattled they were. I drove back through the old business park near the highway where we first started. Most of the lights were off, but my old office still had that warm glow through the blinds. I parked, walked inside with permission from the new tenant, an architect who admired what we'd once built. My old desk was gone, but in the corner still sat the wide, low-backed chair our father built with his own hands when I first joined. Pine, sanded smooth. The initials ZR carved in the back slat, faded but proud. I ran my hand along the grain. For years, I'd felt like I was filling in for someone else, like the role was never meant for me, like I had to earn a seat at a table I helped build. But tonight, I didn't feel like an understudy. I didn't feel like a placeholder. I felt like the author. I whispered to myself, "This is my legacy, Dad, not hers." And that night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, because I was finally ready. 3 weeks later, I stood before the courtroom doors with both feet planted, not shaking, not second-guessing, just steady. Inside, it was quiet. Noor sat at the opposing table, dressed like she was still trying to win a pageant. Her lawyer looked tense, tapping a pen, flipping pages they should have reviewed better. The judge took his seat and adjusted his glasses. "We've reviewed the financial documents submitted by the plaintiff," he began, his voice firm but not theatrical. "There are discrepancies between the version submitted by Miss Noor Reza and the original ledger obtained by the defense." He looked directly at her. "Submitting forged financial records to this court is not just an error, it is a criminal offense." The room didn't gasp. It just went still. Noor didn't speak. Her jaw locked in place, eyes wide, but she didn't look at me. She looked at the judge, like he'd spoken a language she'd never been forced to learn before. Consequence. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but she shook her head like someone refusing to believe gravity. The judge continued, "Given the submission of fraudulent material, we're referring this case for criminal review under Penal Code 1015. Additionally, the court orders financial penalties to be paid to the defendant for damages incurred." Just like that, it was over. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Microphones, questions, lenses. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I walked past the crowd, calm. I let the story speak for itself. I whispered to myself, "You lost, Noor, and I won't let you forget it." Later that afternoon, I met Sana at a corner coffee shop near her newsroom. We sat near the window, the sunlight warming our hands on ceramic mugs. She stirred her drink, glanced at me. "Do you regret any of it?" I thought for a moment. Not about the courtroom, not about Noor. I thought about the quiet Sunday mornings I spent buried in work while she entertained clients. The nights I answered emails from the hospital when Dad was sick, the silence I accepted every time my name was left off a press release. "I regret thinking I needed their permission to matter," I said. Sana didn't respond right away, just nodded the way someone does when they know you've said something that took years to find the words for. "You're a force, Zara," she said, her voice warm. "They never stood a chance." I smiled, but it was bittersweet. "I lost them, Sana. That's the cost." That evening, I returned to the new studio, a co-working space I'd helped open with 2 other women, both founders who'd been forced out of their own companies. One had been pushed out by her ex-husband, the other by a board of directors who didn't think she looked global enough. We had no receptionist, no glass trophy cases, just worn hardwood floors, real plants, second-hand desks, and freedom. My workspace was simple: a laptop, a corkboard, a window that caught morning light, and the chair, Dad's chair, cleaned, polished, the wood now warm, amber in tone. I had a small plaque engraved and fastened along the back. It read, "To the one who stayed silent and then spoke the loudest." I didn't cry when I read it. I just sat. Let the weight of it settle. My story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming. As I looked out the window at the street below, bustling with people chasing their own dreams, I felt something I hadn't in years. Stillness. Not silence. Not submission. Stillness. Later that night, I typed out an email to Sana with one line. "If they reach out again, tell them I've said all I needed to." And then I recorded a voice note for myself, something I could return to if ever I forgot. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It shows up quietly in a courtroom, in an old chair, or in a new beginning. I sat back, let the words echo, and then I asked myself aloud, not needing an answer, have you ever had to walk away from the very thing you built just to save yourself? But as I spoke, a quiet ache lingered. Not for their love, but for the years I'd spent believing I needed it. I'd reclaimed my legacy, but the scars of their betrayal would always whisper, a reminder that even justice carries a weight.